This is where we are, first chapter. This is week 3 of our series as we go through the book of James. If you've missed, I would encourage you to go back and listen. This is an ongoing series and study, and so a lot of the things we draw from are things we talked about in previous weeks. This is just a walk-by-walk, verse-by-verse through the letter of James, who is the half-brother of Jesus. Seems like we've been talking about this a lot in the last few series and weeks here at City Church, but I think we've all faced moments where we did not know what to do. Maybe an unexpected diagnosis and trying to figure out what kind of treatment plans need to take place and those type of things. I remember when Mom was kind of going through the middle of her cancer treatments, like it was just kind of seemed like week to week trying to figure out what's the next step. What's the next treatment? What's going to work? What's not going to work? You rely heavily upon doctors that you believe have your best interest in mind, but a lot of uncertainty. Maybe you're facing some type of financial decision that is a big investment, or it's going to take a lot of money to make this type of investment, and maybe it's a lot of the money that you own, and these are moments where we don't know what to do. Maybe it's a difficult conversation that you feel like you need to have with a coworker, a friend, or a family member. Maybe you are in a dating relationship that you know needs to end, but you're not quite sure how to do it. All these are trials that leave us questioning, like, where do I go from here? What's my next step? God, what do I do? And in these moments, it is very natural to feel overwhelmed and unstable and insecure, like you're standing in the middle of some type of storm with no shelter, no direction, no clarity. James, as we've been talking about the last few weeks, is writing to an audience in the middle of this type of storm. They are displaced from the security and safety of their homes and families. They're facing intense pressure and suffering and persecution. They are isolated and they are filled with uncertainty. And James assures them that while these type trials are inevitable and inescapable, they should rejoice because God uses these trials to shape our faith, to grow our perseverance, and to produce spiritual maturity. And now James, the half-brother of Jesus, this early church influencer, he leans in and he says something incredibly pastoral and practical for us. That when life tests you and you do not know what to do, don't guess, don't panic, don't lose hope, don't try and just figure it out. Instead, he says, ask your heavenly Father for wisdom. So verses 2 through 4 that we talked about last week, they deal with the purpose of trials. And then these verses, 5 through 8, they explain how to endure them. And the how to endure them is by seeking God's wisdom in faith. So kind of the logical sequence, the logical flow of these verses that we've been talking about the last couple of weeks is that trials are inevitable and purposeful. They develop in us perseverance. But when you're in a trial, you may not know what to do. So ask God for wisdom, but ask in faith, not with a divided heart. The words of James are not a self-help, motivational TED Talk. It's not an inspirational, hang in there, locker room speech. It is a call to faith-filled trust in a gracious Father who is eager to provide. So let's unpack what it means to seek wisdom in trials and how to ask in faith without wavering, as James describes it, and how, in the end, all of this process points us to Jesus, who is our hope and our anchor and our security. So James starts verse 5. Well, we've already covered 1 through 4. Let's jump back into verse 5, the very first phrase of that. If any of you lacks wisdom. If any of you lacks wisdom. This word if can actually be translated since. Since, there's an assumption there. Since you all lack wisdom, right? Ask of God. So here's what's implied by the first part of this verse. If any of you lacks wisdom, this implies that in trials, in times of trial, we need wisdom. In trials, we need wisdom. We will need wisdom. in trials, since you need wisdom, since you lack wisdom. It's interesting here, this word choice, that in trials, what we lack is wisdom. What's missing is wisdom. What's lacking is wisdom. Now, what's wisdom? Wisdom, if you're unpacking it in the scriptures, it's more than just head knowledge. It's more than just facts. Wisdom is wise or sound decision-making that impacts my everyday life choices. Wisdom is being able to apply biblical truth in complex situations. It's having a God perspective in life, living life with a God lens. In this particular context, again, we have to be careful with this verse. Sometimes we see it kind of ripped out of its intention. But in this verse, in this context, it's talking about responding rightly in trials, that we are to respond to trials with a God perspective, through a God lens. Notice that James does not teach we need relief. He does not say we need escape from trials, but we need wisdom in the trials. We need spiritual direction. We need God perspective in the trial that enables us to respond correctly. Last part of this verse, verse 5, since you lack wisdom, let him ask God, who gives generously to all without reproach, and it will be given him. So when you lack wisdom, since you lack wisdom, what do? In the trial, we ask God, who gives generously to all without reproach, and it will be given. So the implication here in the second part of this verse, not only in trials do we need wisdom, but this implies that when we ask, God is both generous and gracious. When we ask for wisdom in the trial you need wisdom. And when we ask, God is both generous and gracious. So again, get the flow here. When you lack wisdom, and you will, ask God for it. And this word ask is continually asking. It's a constant asking. It's a constant seeking of God. Now, I love these two phrases here, that God will give generously. This idea of generous is without hesitation. It's freely. It's open. It's purposeful. That God is generous. He's open. He's intentional with wisdom. And he does it without reproach. We can put the word shame there for reproach. There's no shame involved. That God delights in our asking. That when we are asking for wisdom, God grants wisdom generously, and he does so without shaming us, without reproach. God is not stingy with wisdom. God is not annoyed by our asking. So keep on asking. His patience does not run out. So keep on asking. Can I pause here and say God's not like us? God's not like me as a human parent. My patience runs out when I feel like Levi always gets picked on because he's the only one at home now. I need to bring back some of my old Kaylee, Reagan, and Zach stories instead of just the present tense with Levi. But Levi has his moments of, we'll just say, persistent asking. Asking more and more and over and keep on asking to the point as a parent, right, your patience runs out. I get it, son. You can stop asking, right? Answer still no. You ever use that one? Didn't change our mind. Our patience runs out. But we have a Father who is generous and gracious, and his patience does not run out. And so we are instructed and invited, keep on asking. Keep on asking. Because he is generous and gracious. And then verse 6 kind of frames this asking. But let him ask in faith without doubting. Ask in faith without doubting, with no doubting. This implies that when we ask, right, so follow it here, in trials we need wisdom. When we ask for wisdom, God is generous, God is gracious. And then the instruction here, the encouragement here is we ask with a posture, right? A posture of faith. We ask from a platform of faith. The phrase here is ask in faith. This is trusting in who God is, trusting in what God is doing, and not just with the desired outcome we want, not just with the desire that we want, the need that we want, the want that we have. Ask in faith, trusting in who God is, what God is doing, and not just our desired outcome. Now, this word doubting here is the idea of divided loyalty. It's wavering. It's hesitating to trust someone fully. It's not uncertainty. Again, we talked about this in depth in our Wilderness Desert Songs series recently, how there's this space in Scripture to come to God without all the answers and with a level of uncertainty. And so this is not uncertainty we're talking about. What we're talking about is failing to rely fully upon God. Faith, and again, I want to say this clearly. We say this frequently at City Church. Faith is not pretending that you're fine. Faith is not pretending that trials are not difficult. Faith is trusting in God and leaning into Him even when we are not fine, even when everything's not okay, even when the trials are difficult. It is leaning into God even amid our brokenness and complexity and questions. Ask without faith. Ask God from a posture of faith and trust. And then he gives this description about the doubter. Ask in faith with no doubting, for the one who doubts is like a wave of the sea that is driven and tossed by the wind. For that person must not suppose that he will receive anything from the Lord. He is a double-minded man, unstable in all his ways. So follow the logic here. In trials, right, we ask for wisdom. Trials are going to come. We ask for wisdom. God gives graciously and generously. We ask from a posture of faith, because the contrast here, the contrast is that doubt leaves us unstable. Doubt leaves us spiritually unstable. Anytime you see this analogy of the sea in scriptures, is taken from the kind of ancient idea of the sea as a place of chaos and restlessness. If you've ever been on a boat out in the water when a storm was coming, or maybe you're in a storm and the waves start coming in, what happens? Man, that vessel gets restless. Your legs get restless, right? There's an instability that comes with that. Anybody ever been in a boat that capsized? No one. Anybody ever been in a boat that you thought was going to capsize? All of you. Bunch of rednecks with your boats. No. We've all been out on the water, right, with our unstable boats. And we know that feeling of insecurity, instability. And that's the image that James gives us here. Again, he's talking to people that were very familiar with the water, right? They lived on lakes. They were fishermen. They depended on the water. They were out in boats on the water. So James uses an analogy here that they relate to and that we relate to, is the idea of a restless water. And this word double-minded, it literally means to be two-souled, torn between God and myself. And the description here is they are unstable in all ways. In other words, it impacts everything. It impacts my choices. It impacts my emotions. It impacts my thoughts about God and His plan for my life. That doubt leaves us spiritually unstable. And so James paints this contrast between faith and doubt. Faith as this stabilizing, resting in who God is, and doubt as this restless and chaotic that leaves us unstable. So let's do some life applications here that are rooted in the gospel and kind of the practical wisdom that we draw from this text. This is the most fundamental one and maybe our most difficult. When you do not know what to do, ask God for wisdom. Like, that is the clear teaching of this text. When you do not know what to do, ask God for wisdom. So simple, and yet so far removed from our normal, from our practice. In difficult times, we feel pressure to figure everything out ourselves. I'm talking primarily to men right here. I'm not trying to be funny or sarcastic in this moment, but we have this kind of ingrained, built-in DNA level need to figure it out ourselves. I don't know if like Google and YouTube are the greatest invention ever or the worst for a man, right? Because my tendency, whatever's happening, dude, my fingers can do the magic to try to figure it out on my own. I know I've saved myself a lot of money through Google and YouTube and figuring stuff out. But there's a kind of a built-in desire for particularly men to have this need to figure things out, to not rely on others, to not stop for directions, right? It gets like that granular, to be able to figure stuff out on our own. I'm not saying ladies don't have that and do not practice that, but I'm saying there is something in men that has that tendency to just figure it out. And James reminds us in life's brokenness, in the storms of life, in these times of trial and isolation and fear and uncertainty, we do not need all the answers. We just go to the one who is the answer. Ask God for wisdom. When facing a difficult decision, a conflict, a trial, uncertainty, ask God for wisdom. Make it your first response, not your last resort. Let's be honest, this is me as well. Why this is often difficult is because wisdom flows more from relationship than it does from reaction. Wisdom stems from relationship. And when you have grounded yourself in who God is, when you have invested in getting the Word of God into you, when you have a habitual practice in your life of having conversations with God outside of when you just need Him, wisdom becomes more about relationship than it does about reaction. Now, don't get me wrong, we're a gospel church. When you do not have the relationship as you ought and it is a reaction, guess what? God is good and gracious, and He gives liberally to those who ask. But many times in our spiritual lives, if we are investing in the relationship, then wisdom flows out of that relationship. It enables us to live life with a gospel lens, a God lens. We say all the time here, preach the gospel to yourself daily. Part of preaching the gospel to yourself daily, to myself daily, is this idea, God, give me wisdom today. As I respond, as I interact, as I face difficult decisions, as I make decisions, as I face difficulties, give me wisdom. You see the difference in preaching the gospel to myself at the beginning of the day? What Christ has done for me is enough. I trust in what He has done for me. God, I'm going to face some stuff today. Give me the wisdom. Give me the wisdom in that moment to be able to make the right decision, to say the right thing. That's relational. Ask. When you do not know what to do, ask God for wisdom. And then, second idea here that flows from this text, remember, God is not reluctant to help. God is not reluctant to help. He gives generously and without shame, without reproach. He is not stingy with wisdom, and He does not shame you for asking. Again, He is not like us. He does not shame us for asking. I tend, as a parent, to use shame at times, right, over the constant asking. I'll give an illustration from yesterday. Levi, it's getting near school to start, so it's like, hey, what do you want to do this weekend? One of his buddies was at the house. It's like, let's go bowling. And so this became like the mantra of the day. Let's go bowling, let's go bowling, let's go bowling. All right, we're going bowling. We don't really want to drive. I have to drive to Madison almost every day now. So it's like, let's just go bowling here in Decatur. I got a lot of opinions in my mind right now. I need to keep, I'm in the city and for the city. I'll just say it this way. The Decatur bowling alley is not the one I would recommend the highest of all the bowling alleys in North Alabama. Anybody with me on this? But support the local bowling alley here in Decatur. And if you go, you're going to support them. I mean, you're going to give them a lot of your money. So we go bowling. And it's not cheap to bowl anymore. I felt like I used to be able to bowl a game for like $3. And now it's like $30 or something. Some bigger number than I was used to. To which I generously responded, "That's awesome. Here, take my card and charge as much as you want." No. Actually, it was my wife who was like, "Are you kidding me? That's how much it costs to bowl now? You realize there's 4 of us, right? Did you think we were bringing a crowd of people?" So here we are in the bowling alley. We spend the money for Levi and Noah to bowl. And so we're bowling. And Ash bows out. Ash, let's just put this out there. There's not a human being alive as an adult who's a worse bowler than my wife. She's the worst adult bowler I've ever, I think it's intentional sometimes. There's no way you did that without it. There's no way you rolled it into the gutter 6 inches from the line. So she bows out of bowling. So it's the 3 of us bowling. And Levi, he's a competitor. And so, he don't really, they're small and young and bowling balls are heavy. And so, he doesn't have it down like he wants to have it down by, frame number 2. And so he's doing the whole bowling from up here and then not even watching to see if he's just walking back with an attitude after he releases the bowling ball. And I let it go for 3 frames, 2.5. And then I'm like, "Levi, pay attention, do better. Let Dad try to help you." He's 8 going on 16. He doesn't want help. And so he's trying to figure it out himself. And so what do? He's not like us. This is how I am. Do you know how much money we spent to bowl up in here? Right? I got a bowling ball that's got chunks knocked out of it. How am I even, I'm bowling like Fred Flintstone bowling ball. Remember that? It's just kind of making its way down the thing because of the bowling ball itself. It took us 4 frames to even get all 10 pins lined up properly from the machine. And so I'm having this lecture with Levi, we paid a lot of money to come in here. I know it's not the best bowling alley in the world, but change the attitude because I'm not like him. There are times where I use reproach and shame, right? We spend a lot of money, suck it up, stop walking away after you release the ball, make sure you hit something, change your attitude. But he's not like us. He's not using "do you know how much this costs" tactic. God is not rolling his eyes. He's not waiting for you to ask nicely. He's not waiting for you to use the right words. He's not a "you again" type father. That's how some of you feel. I'm bringing it back. Why am I going to bring it back to him again? I've already asked him. God is not a "are you kidding me? It's you again" type father. He is a "I am so glad you came to me" father. Come again. He is good and gracious and eager to give wisdom. So ask boldly and ask consistently because our God is not reluctant to help. He is eager. Also from this text, we're reminded that doubt leaves us unstable, doesn't it? Doubt leaves us unstable. Faith grounds us in who God is, but doubt leaves us unstable. James is not condemning honest questions. He is speaking about divided loyalty, that we can't fully trust ourselves and God at the same time. Hear me clearly. Trust is not a feeling. It is a decision to lean into the promises of God even when I can't see the whole picture. Ever feel like you're living life sometimes, putting a 1,000-piece puzzle together, and you don't have the box lid to see the picture? You ever feel like you just got the pieces, and you're trying to figure out the pieces without being able to see the finished product on the box? Right? God sees the big picture. God sees the whole picture. And sometimes it feels like we're just left with the puzzle pieces to try and figure it out. And so we lean into our feelings, and your feelings will deceive you because they are biased. They cannot be fully trusted. Faith is standing on what we know is true about God, that He can be trusted, that I can trust Him, that God sees the whole picture on the box lid when all I can see are the pieces. Which leads us to this idea. Anchor your decisions in who God is and not your circumstances. Anchor your decisions in who God is and not just your circumstances. It's very telling in this text that James connects wisdoms to God's generous nature and our faith. God's nature and our faith. He does not tie it to anything external. He does not say when your circumstances get better, when things line up better for you, when you have it figured out. No, he connects wisdom to God, who God is, and our faith. That life is going to beat you up at times. Trials are going to come. People are going to let you down. Your own brokenness will get to you. Only God is constant and steady. He is our one sure anchor. He is our true north. So when the trials come, I must stop and ask, what do I know to be true about God, even right now? When I can't trust my feelings completely, when I'm unsure about what's going on, and I don't know how I'm going to get out of this, and I don't know what the next step is, what do I know to be true about God? Even when I don't feel connected to Him. Even when I feel unsure, when I feel beat down and broken. What do I know to be true about God? You see, wisdom isn't just about knowing what to do in difficult times. It is knowing who to trust in difficult times. Which brings us right back to Jesus. Every week, it brings us right back to the gospel, doesn't it? Right back to the good news. Here's what we know about Jesus. Jesus is the wisdom that we need. He is the wisdom we need. Paul says in 1 Corinthians 1, Jesus is our wisdom from God. Jesus is not only the one who gives wisdom, He is the wisdom of God. To ask God for wisdom is to seek the mind and heart of Jesus, to seek Him. When you are confused and overwhelmed and troubled, run to Him. He is the wisdom you need. Seek Him. He is the answer. And because He is the wisdom that we need, that means that we ask boldly. We ask boldly, not because of who we are. We ask boldly because of what Jesus did. Because of the finished work of Jesus, we are fully accepted by the Father. Because of Jesus, we are not rejected. We are not shamed. He bore our shame and rejection so that we can come boldly again and again and again and find mercy to help in our time of need. We come boldly, not based on our own merit or worth. We come boldly based on His finished, complete sacrifice for us that allows us to enter the throne of grace boldly and find mercy. We ask boldly because of what Jesus did. Here's what we can know. We can trust the Father because Jesus trusted the Father for us. We can trust the Father because Jesus trusted Him. Jesus trusted the will of the Father, even when it led to the cross. And because He never wavered, we are credited with His unwavering faith, even when our faith is struggling and weak. And so we cling to Him because He is strong. His faith is enough for us, even when our faith is weak and struggling. We trust the Father because Jesus trusted the Father on our behalf. And then I'll finish with this. Jesus, who is our wisdom, who did enough for us to ask boldly, who trusted on our behalf, Jesus calms the storm in the sea of doubts. Jesus literally spoke peace over wind and waves when he was here. Jesus has the power to calm your internal storms as well. Jesus has the power to speak peace over your fear and your doubt and your guilt and your insecurity. He is our anchor in the storms of life, and he speaks, "Peace, be still," over our troubled and anxious hearts and minds. Rest in him. There's a commercial airline that was approaching the airport in a heavy fog. Visibility was near zero. The pilots could not even see the runway, the lights, or even the ground. But they trusted the air traffic controller who could see everything from his radar. As the pilot grew more and more stressed and tense, the controller calmly said these words, "Just do exactly what I say. You can't see the runway, but I can." And they followed his voice, and the plane landed safely, even though the pilot never saw the way to safety until the wheels hit the ground. In trials, we often feel disoriented. We do not know what to do next, but God sees what we can't. And James reminds us, when we lack wisdom, ask him. Trust the one who sees the whole picture. Let's bow our heads for prayer.